K-Boss Radio Theater proudly presents a jukebox novel in Same Time Yesteryear, The Ballad of Sylvia and Mickey. Chapter 2, I'm Going Home, B-Side. Now, if you were curious what the second song was on that 45 record, you need look no further. I'm Going Home was not a memorable tune. However, in this new ballad of Sylvia and Mickey that was being written by yours truly, it couldn't have been more fitting. You see, in my years of wrinkled liver spots, I find myself riddled with a jury of malignant tumors whose impending verdict has yet to be rendered. I am coming home, back to Hickory Springs, the jewel of Americana, nestled in the pine-drenched valleys between the ocean mist and the lazy bends of the river. The steam whistle blew as the train raced into the tunnel, snapping me awake in the process. That was when the violent coughing attack hit me like a bolt of thunder. I frantically searched inside my bag for pills, but they were not there. Damn! What I did find was a linen kerchief, crusted in blood and mucus from my last outburst, and now I filled it up with a new reservoir of red and yellow sickness. A conductor was making his way toward me from the other end of the dining car between the staggered, linen-draped tables. Last stop, Hickory Springs, dead ahead. Get your tickets ready, please. Hickory Springs, dead ahead. I looked around the car and found that it was empty. It wasn't this way when I boarded. In fact, it had been quite full of other travelers dressed in various costumes and enjoying their Halloween revelry. The car had been much more modern, too. A sleek, sterile representation of the early 21st century, not this worn, quaint version from some bygone era. Waves of confusion and concern washed over me in a tide pool of anxiety and wonder. The windows had turned to midnight as we roared through the darkness of the tunnel. The lights inside the dining car were soft and warm, and this 63-year-old woman turned to inspect herself in the reflection of the window, and I found that my stage makeup was still on, barely concealing my advanced years. Even my wardrobe of earth-toned aviator boots, riding pants, belt, and collarless button-down shirt was still covering a body that had once been slender and strong, but was now surrendering to the tumors, spreading their tentacles and eating me alive. In fact, I looked just like the famous pilot Amelia Earhart would have if she had lived to be my age. In fact, that's who I'd been portraying when I abruptly walked off stage and fled the theater for my impromptu escape. Never throughout my renowned career, whether it was on the silver screen or Broadway, had I committed a deed such as the one I had earlier this evening. Considered a crime among the vapid circles of people I had surrounded myself with, for this I would pay dearly with a death sentence to my career and reputation. And I did not care one little bit. I had discovered that my advancing disease was giving me new freedoms I had never allowed myself before. So I bravely sunk very low in my seat. And there was an old felt cowgirl-style hat resting in the empty seat next to me, and I promptly put it on and pulled it snug over my auburn hair, which I'd tied back into a ponytail. My refusal of the chemotherapy kept me from going bald, and my hairdresser's miracle treatment kept the majority of those nasty gray hairs where they should be. Gone. I took a quick glance behind me through the gap in the back of my seats. Surely if I could not see the conductor, well then, he definitely could not see me. I knew this was the approach of a child and was far from being sound logic for a legendary actress beloved the world over, especially one such as me, Sylvia Louise Woods, entering the twilight of her life. But the cancer had taken me deeper than most people my age. They were the new 40, and I might as well be 80. And yet the scared little girl in me defiantly showed her innocent face by playing a bizarre game of peekaboo with a train conductor whom I had yet to meet. As I slid lower into my seat, I discovered that a worn, brown leather book had been playing its own game of hide-go-seek under the hat which I had just placed upon my head. I picked it up and began to inspect it. "End of the line, Miss Woods. bellowed the conductor, who now towered over me, casting a shadow. I quickly placed the book into my bag and immediately forgot about it. I looked around me, as if he might be speaking to someone else, and chewed my inner cheek. He laughed from deep in his barrel chest. He was a mountain of a man with a familiar aura that was invisible to the naked eye. Sideburns that were silver and bushy framed his face, and thin wired spectacles balanced on the edge of his nose. His uniform matched the elegant time period of the passenger car I had awakened in. I couldn't help but giggle out loud at the absurdity of my situation. This had to be one of those cheap dream within a dream scenarios that television writers used to bring back an actor who had reconsidered leaving a popular TV show after being killed off in the previous season finale. Or this was some elaborate practical joke where I was the buffoon, unknowingly starring as the target of cruel ridicule. I played along, half expecting the gang from Candid Camera with their hidden cameras, and half hoping Bobby Ewing would step out of a steamy shower like in Dallas. Ooh, yay. "Last stop?" I replied, regaining composure. "Yes, Miss Woods. Hickory Springs. Ticket, please," he continued in his pleasant fashion. I innocently looked around the train car. Surely there must be someone else who held this magic ticket he so kindly demanded. My eyes came to rest on his. I took one more quick peek over the seats in front of me. Nothing. Perhaps there was a trickster hiding on the floor behind me. Nothing. Once more my eyes came back to my gentle giant. He raised his bristly eyebrows in a way only an amused grandfather would with a playful child. "Just the two of us, Miss Woods," he said. "Ticket, please?" I said, pointing to myself while chewing my inner cheek. "Well, okay. If it is a ticket he wants, then it is a ticket he shall get. Surely I received one before boarding the train." I trailed my fingers into my pants pockets and came up empty. My jolly giant chuckled. "Let's try the other one, shall we?" I did as he requested, and found what felt like a piece of crumpled, crisp paper money. My fingers were too dry and thin to grasp it properly, fallout from the cancer. I fumbled into my pocket, and it made a beautiful, crinkling sound that gave me a slight yet firm bolt of energy. And as I removed this piece of paper and held it in my hand, it popped from a wad of scrap into the most beautiful, smooth certificate of gold I had ever seen. Written on it was, "Hickory Springs Express. Depart. Cobblestone Theater. Time, earlier this evening." The lines and creases had vanished before my eyes. Surely the home audience was laughing hysterically. Well, I decided to give them a show myself, and I smashed the paper into a firm roll. I opened my hand, and presto! It performed its magic trick on cue. "Well, I have a golden ticket," I said, and looked up at my stranger with complete and utter disbelief. "Indeed you do." He extended his large, wrinkled hand, and I handed him my ticket, hands shaking. I chewed on the inside of my cheek as he produced from his hip holster a device that looked like a hybrid of an old rotary dial label maker and a phaser that Captain Kirk or Spock would use. It was bronze and lined with jewels that blinked in a sequence like a Vegas sign enticing gamblers to a casino. "Let's try this again. I ask, arrival, and you say," he asked. The dots were beginning to connect our minds, and I smiled. "Last stop," I replied with a sigh of relief. He gave me a knowing smile that spread his mustache across his face, then a wink for good measure. As he proceeded to punch away at my magic piece of gold, the rotor with the letters, numbers, and punctuation marks spun wildly around, spitting the discarded clippings into the air. They were like pixie dust flying about and then disappearing into wisps of steam. He blew the remains off the ticket, and they too twinkled like the ones before. "And the time?" he asked. I'm not sure," I replied. His sky blue eyes sparkled as he adjusted his glasses back to the bridge of his nose. "To be determined," he said as he added his final punch on my ticket. He handed it back to me as if he he were presenting me with a precious artifact. Now my golden ticket read, Hickory Springs Express. Arrive, Hickory Springs. Time, yesteryear. Home, I said softly. Tears began to well in my eyes. Won't you please sit down? Miss Woods, I thought you would never ask, he replied as he sat down across the table from me. How do you know my name? Do you have a golden manifest to go along with my ticket? Well, there aren't many women of your stature and notoriety that travel with us. He produced a handheld device that was decorated like his ticket punch, but resembled more of a smart tablet. He began nimbly tapping the glowing screen with his meaty fingers. That isn't to say that we don't have passengers in search of the same grail as you. For instance, Amelia was a delight, and we got her safely to her last stop, boots, hat, bag, and all. He looked at me out of the corner of his eye and gave a sly grin as he continued to tap away. And of course we had Mr. Hawley. Just loved that guitar of his. They both decided it was safer taking the train. Wise choice considering their previous mode of transportation. A far more elegant way to travel, don't you agree? Yes, we've had the young and the old, the household names and the average Joes, and just about everyone in between. He became lost in his thoughts for a moment, and then brought himself back. Sorry, miss. Drifted for a bit there, didn't I? To answer your question, no, I do not have a sparkling manifesto, nor do I consult my magic 8-ball. Not this time, at least. I find that sometimes the simplest of answers are right at your fingertips. And with that, he handed me his electronic device, and the palm-sized screen read, Hickory Springs Express. Breaking news. Renowned actress Sylvia Woods walks off stage and disappears into the night. Massive search underway. I rolled my eyes and guffed in protest. Damn things, I said, and tossed the mini monstrosity back at my friend. He fumbled with it, smiled, and resumed his incessant finger-tapping. I continued to rant. All privacy out the window, and that Wikipedia doo-dah, half-truths and incomplete tales, I snapped. He chuckled at me and set his electronic device on the table before folding his hands in his lap and turning to me. Well then, why don't you tell me the whole truth and nothing but the truth? He produced a stopwatch and chain from his vest pocket and clicked the face open. We have some time before we pull into the station, and this is a story I want to hear. After all, I am your #1 fan. Perhaps I could get an autograph. Mischievous boys who keep secrets sometimes don't get dessert, I said. Laughing out loud, he said, Right you are, indeed they don't. And he repocketed his watch, picked up his smart tablet, and began tapping. The table lights seemed to dim of their own free will to a warm glow, softening both our features. A whisper of music began to fill the dining car, and a familiar voice, a ghost from the past, said, Big Bobcat here, saying, Fare thee well. This one is for you star-crossed lovers on KBOS, where the past is always present. The sound of a lonesome wolf howled, and the music returned in full. Oh, Moon River, my favorite piece of music in the whole world. I swayed slowly to the melody with my eyes closed. Two drifters off to see the world, were we? There is such a lot of world to see, Gabe softly replied. This song was the theme of the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. I was an extra in the background, just a girl back then. My first film role. Were you now? Well, we aim to please here aboard the Express, he said soothingly. We are in need of some refreshments, wouldn't you agree? He tapped away on the glowing screen. I nodded, and as I did, a partition below the darkened window next to me slid open, and a silver tray carrying 2 cups, a decanter, and a plate of cookies magically appeared from the nothingness and onto our table. Hot apple cider and vanilla wafers on a crisp autumn eve, he said. I stared at the apparition with pure astonishment. Like I said, you aim to please, I finished, and please you have. He waved his hands, gesturing to our quaint scene, and cocked his head slightly while raising his eyebrows, searching for my approval for him to fill my cup. I stammered for a moment. The great Sylvia Woods is silenced? He laughed. This is all just lovely, I said, finding my voice. He poured our empty grails full, and the table was instantly cozied with the aroma of apples and cinnamon. There was even a plate with cinnamon sticks, one of which I gladly used to stir my refreshment, causing the steam to rise and fill my battered lungs. I enjoy dunking my cookies, he chuckled at the silliness of this statement, and proceeded to demonstrate his intention. Delicious. He popped the cookie into his mouth and savored the taste, which made his mustache do a tap dance all its own. Have we met before? I am just certain we have, I told him. Get that a lot, he said in between bites. I just have that kind of face. He wiped his mustache with a linen napkin, stole another cookie and sip of his cider. Then he brushed his hands of any remaining crumbs and placed his smart tablet on end in the middle of the table. It began to project a flickering light toward the opposite side of the dining car. Down screen, he said, and a silver film screen lowered from the ceiling, instantly reflecting the images from the mini film projector on the table. An old-fashioned test pattern displayed like a nautical compass, complete with the image of a wise old Indian chief at the top. A radar line began to quickly wind clockwise, counting down. 10, 9, 8. And just what is this, I asked? 7, 6, 5. It's our little version of This Is Your Life. Participation is highly encouraged. Please feel free to fill in any gaps or corrections. Think of it as an interactive game of show and tell, he said with a wink. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the screen dissolved and a slideshow featuring yours truly began to unfold on the screen. Even aboard the magical express train, I could not escape seeing myself larger than life. You were born in Hickory Springs on December 21st, 1945, to a mother who was an actress herself. Your father was a ship's captain and disappeared at sea the day you were born. Your mother was quite the talent herself and traveled the world over with a renowned repertory troupe with you in tow. Having spent most of your youth in the world of show business, there was not much time for a formal education. When you and your mother were not on the road with your show business family, you spent your off time in Hickory Springs, your hometown. How am I doing so far? Not bad. This is quite entertaining, I said, and I meant it. While in Hickory Springs, you lived with your mother's older sister, her husband, and their son. That would be Nana, Uncle Odie, and George, I said. Correct. She did not approve of your mother's life choices and took every opportunity to make mention of it, which led to a lot of tension within the household. But you would escape this with your childhood friend Stephen Mickey Calhoun. Flash forward to the summer of 1959, when you were 13 years of age. You witnessed your mother collapse and die on stage from an undetected heart condition. Then on October 31st, young Mr. Calhoun was killed in a car fire while playing a prank. All of this was too much for a young girl to bear, and you fled your remaining family and your hometown by turning your back and running away with the theater troupe, never to return until this evening, Halloween. 50 years later to the date. So, Miss Woods, the question is, what brings you back? I sat quietly for a moment, fiddling with the cinnamon stick that now rested in my empty cup, and thought to myself very carefully before I spoke. This was an actor's technique that I had mastered over the years and had every intention of using, especially at this moment. Then I responded. My mother would sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow at the end of each show. It was her signature sign-off, and the audiences knew it and they expected it. She adored Judy Garland, and though they never met, it was Mother's way of saying thank you. She made me promise that if for any reason she was unable to sing, I would do it for her. Well, she died just as the orchestra was cueing up that famous song. It was fast. Her heart just burst like a bomb. We were spending the summer and early fall of 1959 in the Springs, and that show was the season opener in the outdoor theater. Well, the shows went on as scheduled without her, and the closing song, I just couldn't replace her. I tried the first time and just broke down. Quite embarrassing, really. The months passed, and I agreed to give it another try on closing night, Halloween. But I wiped tears from my eyes, and my companion offered me his handkerchief. "Take your time, dear," he said. I never made it to the show because I was too busy failing to get Mickey out of the trunk of Cancer's wicked '55 Chevy, the Beast. Cancer. That was the nickname of the town's #1 deadbeat greaser in a leather jacket. Our nemesis with the numero uno. We were playing a prank of payback that went terribly wrong and ended with Mickey being trapped in that car, burnt alive. It plays back in my mind. You see, I failed on 2 counts. I never kept that promise to my mother, and I watched my dearest friend, my only friend, burn alive in the Beast that night. I just stood there and did nothing. I began to sob. I returned to my reflection in the dark window and tried to visualize his young, vibrant face, framed by his black-rimmed glasses and with that infectious, crazy grin. He was my first and only true love. I know that sounds so childish when I hear myself say it aloud, but it's true. Yes, sir, that is one tabloid story I will keep between just you and myself. "Well, what could you have done?" he said. "I don't know, something. Instead, I just ran away, stowed away, inside that train with my theater friends. No one made a fuss. Isn't that funny? Sad, really. I just ran, and it feels like I've been running ever since. Now I'm coming to..." I stared at my reflection in the window. "I'm coming to, the end of the show. And I have nothing to show for it but a lifetime of regret. No family or true friends. In the end, it'll just be me, alone. I've spent an eternity in search of the next curtain call, always living just on the edge of dying alone, and now that scares the hell out of me." "You've made a lot of people laugh and cry, touched people. I know that goes for me," my companion consoled. "That's very kind of you to say, but once we reach the station, the curtain will fall on this act, leaving us to go our separate ways. It's why I had to come back. You see? Just one last time. Not only to perhaps come across an old familiar face or visit the graves of Mickey and my mother, but to say goodbye to the town, properly. They are all Hickory Springs, and they all deserve my respects." "You know it won't look like it did when you left," my companion said. "I know that's silly," I replied, beginning to feel cheerier at the thought of seeing my girlhood home. "Progress is no stranger to me, nor I to it. I just want to step off the train and breathe in the sea air if the breeze is blowing from the west, or if it's coming in from the east, that musky smell of the river bend. Perhaps see the old neighborhood and take in the late blooms. Then I might just stop at the Beehive and have a soda with 2 scoops of ice cream. That's the drugstore and diner. If it was busy, we would say the Beehive is a-buzzin'. Then see what modern film might be playing at the Clip Clop Cinema next door. Perhaps something I've done recently." I gave him a playful wink. "I'll check into the St. Christopher Grand Hotel, walk the orchards, the theater under the stars, Popcorn Creek, and even the last rail, that broken down old rail car that served only stilled whiskey. Ooh, I just can't wait. And you say you've never been there?" "I don't recall that I did, but since you ask, no. "The life of a railroad man is a busy one," he replied. "But you ride this line all the time. Surely you must have gotten off at the junction of Route 66 and this majestic iron railroad just to stretch your legs around my beloved Hickory Springs," I playfully protested. Just then the dining car was flooded with light and the train shot out like a cannonball from the midnight of the tunnel. My traveling companion stood up, straightened his uniform, and checked his gold pocket watch. "I'll tell you what. We'll wait for you 1 hour. I'll make special arrangements with the engineer. Give us a chance to water up and grease the gears." "Oh, that's awfully thoughtful of you, but I won't be leaving. Not today, at least," I said, feeling giddy as if being 13 years old was just a train stop away. "All right, but just in case, 1 hour, and not 1 minute more." He glanced at his watch and snapped it shut, replacing it in the pocket of his vest while looking up in the air for his better judgment. I stood up and immediately felt a stiff, sharp pain run down my body, forcing me to unsuccessfully hide my wincing reaction. "Sitting or standing neither agrees with me for too long anymore," I said, brushing it off as my friend tried to assist me. "The dirty secret is that the tumors don't just affect the part of the body that they have infested. They like to spread their tentacles in search of more hosts to invade. But I must say, I am feeling better. Something in that cider has definitely soothed my chest." "Well, before you go, I must tell you that I've been told that Hickory Springs has been in a bit of, how shall I say it? A standstill. So just a word of caution, if I may. The passing years have not been gentle," he warned, showing his pity in a downturned mouth and mustache. "Well, things can't be so bad," I replied, making my way to the exit of the dining car. "Well, things didn't quite turn out the way we had hoped," he said, motioning toward the dust-bathed window as the train came to a stop, almost knocking the two of us off balance and onto the floor. "Well, then, I say that today is a good day for making things right," I countered. I donned my hat, giving it a little tilt to the side, when a thought occurred to me. It sure would be exciting to go back to that time, 1959, knowing what I know now, of course. "Well, I'm happy you see it that way. Just the kind of spirit we need around here. But go easy on her. I'm not sure she's ready to have the free-spirited Miss Sylvia Woods unleashed on her quite yet. Would you like that autograph now, Mr. Well, now I can't believe this entire trip I never asked your name. You'll have to forgive me," I said with embarrassment. "Autograph?" He chuckled in his massive frame with his hands firmly in his pockets. "Of course! Slipped my mind. Perhaps on the way back. You have some busy days ahead of you." He then picked up a shiny red kerosene lantern and waved it out the door in several grand sweeping gestures to signal to the train engineer and all of Hickory Springs that we had arrived. "And please forgive me. Name's Gabe." "Ooh, yay! Short for Gabriel, no doubt," I said with a hint of suspicion, and Gabe gave me a wink as he tipped the brim of his cap along with a soft click from the side of his mustache for confirmation. "Wish me luck," I said with apprehension, closing my eyes, swallowing hard, and maneuvering out of the car and onto the stairwell platform, leaving my friend standing alone. I heard him say behind me, "Godspeed, Miss Woods." Stay tuned for Chapter 3, Somewhere Through the Tunnel and Over the Rainbow, on K-Boss Radio Theater, where the past is always present.